Yes, I think we're on a practical first lesson of Bhagavad Gita, which you've all heard many times. Komara, Jovara, Jara, Kadihantara Prati. So when Srila Prabhupada came to Vrindavan in July 1977, he came from Rishikesh. Prabhupada was very ill, and he just had a 1 minute talk. He just spoke for 1 minute, reception. And so he said, if I die, I want to die here in Vrindavan. He said, there's nothing to lament. And that's what Krishna says, Dira Statra. So someone who's Dira, they don't lament. Ultimately, it's the inevitability of being in this material world. It's the inevitability of this material body. And His Divine Grace, Krishna Das Swami Maharaj, serving. He served before in one body, now he's serving in another body. Obviously, we don't get to see him serve in our presence, but he's serving somewhere else. So it's natural to lament, but we always keep everything in the perspective of knowledge, because with that knowledge, that gives us a different perspective on things. And of course, a Vaishnava is always present. He's present in his instructions, in his vani. He's present in his form, in his picture. And he's always present in our hearts. So that presence, that is something that's eternal. This other one is temporary. It's inevitable, the body has to go, but this other doesn't go. So you should, once Maharaj and I were in the parking lot of the manor. We were somewhere, I don't know where we were, but we stopped at the parking lot, and he said, you know, an astrologer told me I have one more birth in the material world. I told him, I said, it doesn't need an astrologer to tell you that. He was sort of upset about that he had to come back to the material world. I said that's our process, is that next birth, you take birth somewhere in the material world where Krishna's having his Leela. That's what going back to Godhead means. And after that, you go to Goloka Vrindavan. The Maharaj was very happy. He said, yeah, that's right. So it's good taking one more birth. Everyone takes another birth. So going back to Godhead means that you take birth again somewhere in the material world. Krishna is appearing, and those devotees who all devotees, all sadhakas, all practicing devotees get training from Krishna's eternal associates. And because material body is only so good, it doesn't facilitate all types of devotional expression. You need a spiritual body, and in order to learn those types of expressions of service and love for Krishna, one needs a spiritual body, but you can't learn in the spiritual world. can only learn in the material world. So Prabhupada explains this, Sanatana Goswami explains. But Maharaj is with us. He's with us, in one sense, in a much more personal way. Because you can only be in his company so much. Even when he was physically here, you can only spend so much time with him. But in terms of Vani, in terms of being in our hearts, then it's up to you, whether it's 24 hours a day or not. And this then becomes you have no choice. You have to go within, because ultimately, Krishna consciousness is within, Guru is within, Krishna is within, transcendental knowledge is within, chanting Hare Krishna is not an external activity, it's also within. And it's as described last chapter of Prabhupada Lilamrita is called the final lesson. So this is the final lesson. It's the lesson that everyone teaches, and it's the lesson that everyone learns. Nothing new. You heard it from Maharaj many times. So it's no surprise. But that doesn't mean we're humans, we're persons. And yes, lamentation is also part of Krishna consciousness, but Krishna conscious lamentation. So cry, that's good. That's good. But to cry in knowledge. We don't cry in ignorance. And that's Krishna conscious crying. Anyone have any questions?
How did you meet Maharaj? How was your first interaction? How did you meet and where did you meet?
I came to the UK in 1980. He was living at the Manor at the time. So I was actually in Chaitanya College, but I was always traveling. I became the first Sankirtan leader for the UK, so I was half the time there, half the time. I lived in a motorhome though most of the time, except for 1 year. The year that Maharaj had his heart attack, for that year I lived at the room in the Brahmacharya ashram, and he lived on the other side, in the other opposite room. We were, until I was in the UK, that was the time when we had most, when he was living at the Manor. Then he became Coventry-based, or South London, and then when he started traveling, especially when I left and I got based in Hungary, then less. But that was in 1980. And it was the first time we met. A lot of memories. I don't know if I'd have time for them all.
Give us a word or two.
I mentioned this on the way here. I did a podcast. When I arrived at the Manor, I can't remember who, but someone had gotten divorced. Now, everyone knew in Krishna consciousness that marriage is, you're not supposed to get divorced. But, we didn't, it was all right, so it happened. Maharaj was very upset. And whenever he would give class, doesn't matter what the class was about, ultimately he would come to that. And I said, why is he getting so worked up about this? And then gradually it, became very clear to me. It's something that I get worked up about now. That unless we actually have Dharma, and unless we keep the basic principles of Krishna consciousness, the basic principles of Dharma, as Prabhupada said, first be conscious, then be Krishna conscious. So, and we're not going to have a society unless devotees know how to actually, what Maharaj would often say is, live in the goodness, be in the mode of goodness. And so that was sort of our first interaction. Often we would have lunch. We would have lunch together, and at that time Bhagwan was the GBC. I remember often talking, and because I appreciated his real depth of knowledge of Indian culture and Puranas. So I remember a lot of times just after everyone got up and left, we'd just sit there, and then he would talk. The one that really sticks in my mind was when he told me the life story of Shankaracharya, and that went on for a couple of hours. And I would ask him about different things. I asked him about, another one I asked, that was, I remember sitting in, we had the dining room, we would eat in, was the library at the manor. Him talking about Third World War from the Vishnu Purana. And different things like that. And we just sort of like talk. And he would talk, of course, about his meeting with Prabhupada and how I just saw Bhakti Chaitanya Maharaj put on the GBC conference. I didn't know who it was that knocked on his door. He told me it was Charana Arvindam, devotee who first met Maharaj. And I think the most significant thing that that sticks in my mind of many things was that Prabhupada met Maharaj, Maharaj met Prabhupada, he came to see Prabhupada, and he moved in the ashram and he left his family. Now, if I tell you to do that, you're not going to do that.
Well, might be interested.
The only other person who came close to it was Nitai Charan, who moved into it.
Yes.
But his kids had already grown up. And he was retired, and but Maharaj left.
Yeah.
And even, his family tried to deprogram him, and
Yes.
which is pretty significant. I mean, we did that, but, for us Westerners, it's pretty standard. I'm trying to convince a lot of the youth every time I go to the manor, forget about your parents, just move into the ashram.
Is anyone?
Huh?
Is it one?
Sometimes, but it's rare.
Right.
It's rare. But Maharaj did it.
Yeah.
That tradition didn't come from us, it came from India. It came from India that at a certain, when you realize what your calling is, then you leave it behind. Maharaj had said, Shankaracharya did it at age 8. He left his family. So that was a real, in other words, it showed how much, although, Maharaj received Diksha from his guru and not from Prabhupada, but he was a Prabhupada man.
Yeah.
Because he did what many other people who may have been initiated by Prabhupada didn't do. And especially many devotees initiated now, Indian community, who still don't do. And I think that speaks a lot. That speaks a lot. That Maharaj gave his life as soon as he realized who Prabhupada was and what ISKCON was. I never heard him say this, but Bhakti Chaitanya Maharaj wrote this, that when Maharaj would go around preaching, he would say that Prabhupada was the 13th Mahajan.
Yes.
You heard him say that?
Many times. Yes.
Funny, I never heard him say that.
Yes.
Yeah. So he was a Prabhupada man, and that was on the basis of that I really had to push so that people accepted he become a Diksha Guru, because it wasn't like just a fait accompli, because everyone question came up, but it's not Prabhupada's initiated disciple. But he gave everything, and everyone accepted that.
At the first meeting, Maharaj explained to us several times that Prabhupada effectively told him to
Take sannyas.
Support his movement and take sannyas, give up the family. And he wrote to his spiritual master saying that this amazing sadhu is doing this in London,
Right.
and I joined him. And this spiritual master said,
Gave his blessings.
if there's such a great soul, you wholeheartedly work for him.
Yeah, Maharaj had told me that when we talked about his guru, how his guru was very supportive that he was doing this.
But because through his heart, Prabhupada was accepted as his sannyas guru. So, and then Prabhupada left before actually giving the full blessing. We've always accepted that he is his sannyas disciple.
That's what Maharaj would say. I mean, they did a ceremony at that time.
Yes.
Dry Tirtha from Prabhupada's picture.
Yes.
Huh?
The same as the way Bhakti-siddhanta says that Maharaj took sannyas in the picture of his Guru Maharaj.
Well, I'll tell you another piece. After the operation, Maharaj asked me to say the sannyas mantra, because what does it taking sannyas mean? Where did the mantra come from?
Yes. Yes.
So I can't remember, but he said, I can't remember what he said, but I told him the mantra.
Right.
Otherwise, he didn't get it.
Yes.
They get it from a picture. Certainly didn't get it from Jai Tirtha, who was a Grihastha. But in any case, the essence of the sannyas was that he left, because that's the substance of sannyas.
Yes.
You give up everything for Krishna. Anything else? I'm going to go.
One question, but I'm going to ask it in private.
Okay. I'm going to go back. I'm going to shower. I'm going to take out Radha Damodar. I'm going to feed them, and then I'm going to go see Radhe Shyam, Krishna Balaram, and Govinda Maharaj is coming in the morning.
Haribo.
And then I'll be here. I'll leave Saturday morning, early in the morning.
And are you flying that time? You will be flying?